Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of ChurchBoom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast today. We're talking with my good friend, Pastor Tommy. He's got a great church, and we're talking about how to avoid growth barriers before they show up. So if you're growing as a church, how do you figure out how to not get stuck and to stay ahead of any barriers that'll happen? It is a great coaching conversation. Before we jump into it, I want to tell you just real quick, you should check out ChurchBoom Network. You go to churchboom.org, and we have a ChurchBoom Network now where you can be a part of a network of pastors that are growing together, developing together, learning from each other. You get into a group of about 5 to 10 pastors. They get on a Zoom once a month. They work with each other, help each other, encourage each other. It has been life-giving and life-changing for so many pastors. So go to churchboom.org, check out the ChurchBoom Network. But hey, let's jump into the conversation today with my good friend, Pastor Tommy. Let's dive into it, man. How can I help you today, and how can I serve you?
So we have a couple different questions. One of them is we have a young staff and a ton of young leaders. Some folks just right out of college, some folks still in college, but it's amazing because they do incredible things. I mean, they have no fear, they don't know failure, and so they just go for broke. But I just want to figure out, how to get that training trajectory for them. The things that I could do, what would you say are like the key foundational pieces that could last them a lifetime, but kind of help them get caught up to speed? Things have grown so much so fast. It's been pretty amazing. So just kind of want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, let me fire back a question at you. What are you currently doing in their development? Like, is there something that you're doing, something you're going after? Yeah.
So one of the things we do is we read a book often. Right now we're reading, Develop the Leaders Around You by Maxwell. We read Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership. We read another book by Craig Johnson, Leading Up. We read another book that's not coming to memory right now, but we've read at least 4 books in the last year. So we spread them out. And then, so in our staff meetings, I do a vision huddle skills meeting. So I cast vision, but then we huddle for calendar and logistics. And then we do some sort of skill, something that we can all do or improve or get better at. Thank goodness my wife is on staff with me now as executive pastor. So she's also helping. I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to think, what are the key development pieces for these young, fired up, being used greatly, ton of ideas.
Yep.
What are the key pieces for their development?
Yeah. Well, I love it. Well, I think I was just wondering what you were already doing. I think it's great that you're taking them through a book. I call that leadership circles. I would encourage you a couple things. One, keep taking them through books and then get them to do the same. Because what you want is what you would love to have in a church of, let's say you're on 1,000 people, in a church of 1,000 people, wouldn't it be amazing if we had 250 people in leadership circles? And that could happen inside of 24 months. It doesn't take very long. You can do that pretty quick. One, I love that you're doing leadership circles is what I call them. Love that you're doing that. Encourage you to continue to foster that they do that as well, because one thing is when they sit in that chair of leading that circle, it develops them. Because they have to read, they have to kind of have some thoughts. So you're going to push them not into teaching leadership, but you're going to push them into facilitating leadership conversations. And that is a wonderful way of growing. So their personal development is going to, and they've already done the books. So now it's like, hey guys, we already did book whatever. Take that book. Now go do that with your top 5, 6, 7 people. They can pick people from their team or people that they think just have potential in the church. And they need to do their own leadership circles. That would be extremely helpful because I always tell people that one of the greatest ways you learn is when you are adding value to other leaders because you're forced into leadership conversations that otherwise you would not have. It pushes them into leadership conversations they would not have. Secondly, I would highly recommend, if they don't have one, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that everybody has a coach. Now, it doesn't have to be a big costly thing for them, I'm telling you, it could be as simple as this. The youth pastor admires maybe the youth pastor admires another youth pastor somewhere else and just says, dude, could I get 30 minutes on the phone with you once a month for the next 6 months? And, children's pastor could do the same. Worship pastor could do the same. And just that ability to be able to get coaching for them would be a huge part of it. So, one, they're facilitating conversations. You're having meetings with them. That's awesome. They're having their own circles. But now they have their own coach. And when I was a youth pastor, I didn't have money. My lead pastor wasn't going to give me money to go get coached. But I found someone that was willing to give me 30 minutes a month. I mean, I would have liked more time, but I couldn't pay for it. But he was willing to do that. You'll find that youth pastor, children's pastor, worship pastor somewhere out there, if they'll reach out and say, will you give me 30 minutes a month? If they're going to do that, tell them a couple things. One, never be late to the conversations. Two, always come with questions.
Great idea.
In coaching, the agenda travels up. The agenda doesn't travel down. Never down. In coaching, the agenda travels up. You're asking the questions, the person being coached. The coach doesn't get on there for 30 minutes, goes and just starts rambling. It's like, come with three. So tell them, you better come with 3 or 4 great questions, which, again, now, in addition to being coached, they have to think of great questions, which is also development. So they're getting developed in their skill, and they're also leading out coaching conversations.
Got it. Man, that's a great idea. 30-minute coaching component. They come with the questions, they set it up, they seek that out, and connect and relate. Man, I love that idea. That's a great idea.
Yep, they can do it easy. I would hold them accountable. Say, guys, you got a couple weeks to decide who you want it to be, and then you got a couple weeks to try to get them that person to commit to doing it.
Okay.
And tell them not to just go with their buddy down the street that they somewhat admire. That's okay. But tell them not to be afraid to shoot a little higher. It's like, I don't really know that guy in Arizona, but man, I've heard about him. Because I'm telling you, the majority of the time, the people on the other side are just honored that someone's reaching out to them, and they'll give them 30 minutes.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
So I think the young leader component, it's amazing what we've been able to do with a lot of youthfulness. We got a guy that just turned 40. He's absolutely phenomenal. And we were laughing. We're saying, hey, welcome to the old guy club at church. And he's like, I don't receive that. I don't accept that. I said, well, you're now the third oldest person here, man. Congratulations. So he was struggling with that a little bit. We thought it was funny. I think the next piece is how do you process restructuring? The church grew dramatically in the last 2.5 years, man. We saw 2,200 people make decisions for Christ since I've been here. Literally, like one person the second Sunday, 2 people the third Sunday, and then just dramatic experiences after that. So we have about a 25% retention rate, but the things that we did at the smaller mobile, stage, flexible, and things of that nature, as the church has grown, it's like, whoa, it's been pretty exciting, but then at the same time, we're always catching up. And so I know there needs to be change. I know, we need to maybe regroup and retool. I'm just not sure, how do you process that structural change and growth? Because you know that what you did for 300-400 is worked at 300 or 400, but you survived 6, but man, at 9, you just got to rethink this thing.
Yeah, well, one, I think it's great, first of all, Tommy, that you are asking this question, because what you're really doing is you're trying to stay ahead of the bell curve. Okay, you've had 2 years of growth, but eventually the honeymoon comes to an end. Yeah. And what you don't want is, that's okay that the honeymoon comes to an end. All honeymoons come to an end. But what I'm saying is you don't want the momentum to come to an end. So what happens is the bell curve is like, it's going really great. It's going really great. Right now you're in the it's going really great stage. Yeah. And if you keep the structure and everything the same, eventually it'll do this. Okay. It's going to start flattening out. You got to stay ahead of that. That's what great leaders do. Great leaders think further and faster than anybody else. So you got to see down the road and go, if we don't fix this, there's going to be a problem. And that's your question, is that. And so I commend you for having that kind of question. One thing that you have to understand, I have two coaches in my life. They coach me all the time. And I get coached from my own personal coaches. Although we have a coaching organization, we coach hundreds of pastors every month. I've got my own personal coach. One thing my coach taught me is the size and speed of your organization will always be determined by its structure and strategy.
Okay.
The size and speed of your organization will be determined by structure and strategy. And so the idea is if you took a bullet train in Japan that goes 300 miles an hour, you picked up that bullet train and put it in Texas on train tracks that were built in 1890, it won't go 300 miles an hour. Now, the funny thing is it was built to go 300 miles an hour. The engine can go 300 miles an hour. It wants to go 300 miles an hour, but the tracks won't allow it.
Okay.
The church, your church, it wants to go 300 miles an hour. It can go 300 miles an hour. You want it to go 300 miles an hour, and it feels like it is now. But eventually, if you don't figure out these tracks, the tracks won't allow you to go as fast as you want to go. So the structure, so that's why I say the size and speed of any organization is determined by its structure and strategy. The structure is those tracks. If you don't fix those tracks, you won't go 300 miles an hour. And so it's good that you're thinking that way. So here's the bottom line. As you move up in the growth of the church, looking at the structure, there's a few things that you need to look at. One of the things is who answers to who.
Okay.
Accountabilities start to change. Okay. You can't have everybody at some point be accountable to you. You have to create layers of accountability. Otherwise, you're going to be in the weeds the entire time and not leading out in front. So your structure has to change. I tell people all the time, hey, what got you to 5 won't get you to 1,500. There's no way. It's like you and I owning, Chris and Tommy's hamburger stand or whatever. And we're like, we got a hamburger stand and it's awesome. And we're making a lot of money and we're doing really good. And then we're like, we're going to open up 20 more, not in the same structure, right? Because you and I are working that little hamburger stand and we're making money, but it's like, well, wait a minute. Now there's 20 stores. Who's organizing all the food getting there? Who's managing it all? Who's reporting to who? What's the structure? Everything changes. Okay, now take that old hamburger analogy, as humorous as it is, and move it to the church and go, yeah, that was fine at 500. It's not fine at 1,500.
Yeah.
So accountability has to change. Who's reporting to who? Okay, that's one thing that has to change. Staff meetings start to change as you get bigger because the staff meetings become more focused, where it's like, okay, I can't just meet with, in a typical setting, it's pastor walks in, the whole staff is there, and we meet. Well, the problem is, for some of those people, there's only about 15 minutes of relevancy in the entire staff meeting for them. Because you're talking about something that they're not dealing with, that's not an issue. So the youth pastor just sits there, the children's pastor just sits there. Not good. And so you have to start changing the structure. So something might look like this, just thoughts. Okay. Here's the lead pastor, okay? Maybe, I'm not saying that's today, but maybe it's like, okay, and who's the executive team? So now you have the lead pastor, and then you have the executive team. Then you've got directors, youth pastor, children's pastor, worship pastor. They're directors. Under them, they have team leads, and under them, they have the team, the volunteers. So now all of a sudden it goes from lead pastor to everyone in the meeting to lead pastor, executive pastor, directors, which is your current staff. Then under the directors, they have team leads, and under the team leads, they have the volunteers or, the team or whatever, however you want to title it. I'm just making this up. But at some point you have to shift from, man, it's Tommy and the staff. Well, no, now it's Tommy and the executive team. The executive team has a separate meeting than the current staff meeting. Okay. Then as you get bigger, they're going to start having the executive team is going to have meetings with the directors that you're not even a part of. So as you grow, it just gets different. So I don't know where you're at right now, but consider executive teams and consider points of accountability. Consider staff meetings. Who's in them? Is this an all-staff meeting? Is this a director's meeting? Is this an executive team meeting? Totally different.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So I love the way you said it. And I think we just did it happened by default for us. We had an all directors meeting and but there were logistics and details that needed to be hammered out that you couldn't do with all those people in the room.
Right.
So what we have is that there's a separate meeting called an operations meeting. So you have the director of
Yep.
operations and my wife, Pastor Asanat, the executive pastor, leading
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And thank the good Lord I don't have to go to that one, man, because I'd be swamped. But just the other day, I think we've met twice. Kind of what you called an executive team. I
Mm-hmm.
just felt the need to pull together the music director, the operations person, and the executive pastor. Just
Mm-hmm.
said, hey, we need to come together because we have some bigger picture questions we need to answer before we have this other meeting. And
Right.
so we've done that twice, and just that gut level felt like I have some bigger questions that I need these groups to speak into
Mm-hmm.
before we actually do the other gathering. So
Yeah.
I think we're heading in the right direction, kind of
Yeah.
like what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on that point. Who's accountable to who?
Okay. Who's accountable to
What
who?
are the meetings? What do they look like? Um, and
The
uh,
focus. You talked
the
about the
focus
focus.
in the meetings, how that
Yes.
all looks. One other thing I would say is as you grow, um, the need to have high talent people around you gets greater.
Mm,
I'll throw that in there. It's not really part of the question. It's not a structure
okay.
question. It's more of a
Yeah.
talent question.
Okay.
Um, but often what happens is you get in there and, maybe you inherited some staff members or maybe you have a staff member there and everybody's growing except for this one or two staff members and they're kind of staying the same.
Mm,
And we have a tendency as leaders to tolerate them because we don't want to hurt them and we love them. But the reality is everybody else is doing this and they're not.
okay.
So keep an eye on that because one thing I'll say is, I say it all the time, is a leader never goes farther than the team he puts around himself.
Okay.
That you take the top 2, 3, 4 people, Tommy, around you,
Okay.
that will usually dictate how far and fast you go.
Okay.
You gotta go. Always be thinking, man. I want to get the level of talent in here. Obviously, loyalty and character and all that, but I want to get the level of talent in there. I gotta have the right people around me. Um, that's an important part of it. It's not so much a structure question. One more quick thing is because we said the size and speed is determined by its structure and strategy. We talked about structure real quick on the strategy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to be thinking strategic when it comes to questions like, how do we develop leaders here?
Okay.
Well, we just see someone that's faithful, and then we kind of give them a position, and we kind of raise them up. Everybody kind of has this kind of a him-ha answer. It's like, no. Tell me exactly how you raise up leaders here.
Okay.
How do you exactly create generosity in the church? Exactly how do you do that?
Okay.
So you have to be thinking strategic because most of the time we leave it to this sort of by chance or organic. But I tell leaders all the time, most leaders think from top to bottom. They don't think from left to right. So here's our mission and here's the 29 programs we do versus thinking from left to right. How do we develop leaders in this church from left to right? Like new person to becoming a full leader. How do we get a new person from the community to become fully devoted? How do we take someone that just come into the church and then they're starting to tithe? Just preach on it once in a while? That's our plan? Or do we have an actual so just be thinking strategically on the big areas. You have to be able to answer the question. How do we actually do that here? Real clear. In baseball, it's you go to first base, you go to second base, you go to third. We know exactly what we're supposed to do. What do we do here when it comes to leadership, generosity, and so on?
Yeah. That's
Strategically thinking
good.
from left to right.
That's good. And I think so. I think we have a system that works for us, but we have a lot of things that haven't been questions that haven't been answered, like to flesh out that particular strategy. But
Yep.
we got an overall. Um, so, but there are all these other elements. When you mentioned the giving, I thought, oh my goodness, man, what's the answer to that question? So I'm glad
Yeah.
this is being recorded. Because I think that's exactly where we're at. We've got big piece building blocks,
Yep.
but there's some elements where the details haven't been filled into the block.
Yep.
So, Yeah,
Yep.
so those are things that I feel like we're still building the plane. It's already up in the air. So,
Yeah, good, good. Well, be thinking about those. If you go to, I don't know if you're part of it, but if you go to ChurchBoom University, there's a master
mhm.
class on leadership. We have another master class I think we're launching on generosity, or we have a recording on that as well. But those are things you have to learn. And of course, that's ChurchBoom University. People can get that, but you have to figure out, like on the generosity. Oh, we're just going to preach about it. Well, that's the plan. Like, how are we gonna do this? And what are the 8 things that could be laid out in what I call a generosity calendar
Okay.
to make sure that we are moving people? It is more than a money
Wow.
issue; it's a discipleship issue. Because the last thing to get saved in someone's life is their wallet, and so, and we all know that we need resources, and So anyway, think
That's
about structure, like we already talked about, but then think about
okay.
strategy. Answer the question: how do we do that around here?
Oh, that's
Most guys
good.
don't have a good answer, man. It's like, oh, we kind of do
Good.
this and we kind of do that with leadership. We kind of do that with giving. I'm like, that's not an answer. Tell me
Man, that's good.
exactly how you do that. And
Man, that is great. It's funny, Chris, because we kind of stumbled onto what we have. I'm not even kidding.
mm,
I think the good Lord just, at gut level was directing us. But people come on Sunday morning and we see a ton of people accept Christ and they go to next steps. And
mm,
we run a 4-week next steps. You can jump in and out anytime. We do a dinner at my house after next steps, after you complete next steps. We try to get you into a family life group because we want you to grow in community and get connected with other people like you. And they're pulpit groups, so it just is a kind of a further going after the sermon, questions, things of that nature.
yeah,
And then we try to get you plugged into a ministry. So part of the 4 weeks is a little quick assessment on where you can serve, where you can be a part of. So we try to get you on a ministry team. And then we have, we call the Hearts on Fire College. There's a discipleship track and a leadership track. We're still filling in the gaps for the leadership track. Um, we're still trying to answer that question, but that's where we partner with SoCal School of Ministry. That's part of Hearts on Fire College. So if they wanted to do Bible and ministry, they could do credentialing,
right.
or they could just do the leadership pieces. And then when you do all complete all of that, we call it a Heart Revolutionary. So
That's
we
great.
got that larger system, but all these other pieces that you're mentioning in terms of a giving system and what are all the different elements that we teach? I'm still trying to figure out what we should actually be teaching in the leadership track. So it's there. We're just trying to figure it out still.
I get it. I get it. Well, if I can help with you on that off this podcast, you let me know. But that's what we're here to do, is just help figure it out, and get some
Yeah.
help figuring it out. That's why I have 2 coaches in my life. I've had them for over 10 years
Yeah.
because I
Thank you.
want I want to stay ahead constantly, and that's why I have coaches in my life. So, yeah. What else is on your mind, man? Anything else?
I think that giving piece. So when you mentioned the giving piece,
Yep.
just kind of off the top of my head, what would you do? How do you even talk about should we maybe get these components to the giving strategy in place before we try to do a major gift campaign? We have older buildings, we got some remodeling to do. We have, some pews. It'd be great to have theater seating. We got some carpet that's been in there for a while, a long, long, long while. But it's a lot of flooring. I mean, the campus is huge. There's different needs, things of nature. We were able to resolve a lot of issues and make a lot of repairs in the last 2 years. But there's a bigger push that needs to happen. I'm just wondering, based on what you were saying about kind of a giving system,
hmm
should we be working towards putting that in place prior to kind of a bigger campaign?
Well, your church has been around a long time. I know the church. I don't think they're scared by a campaign. So I think you could do a campaign if needed. Um, and I think you actually can do both at the same time. To the quick sort of snapshot version, and there's a lot more details to this,
Okay.
is I encourage people to look at a 12-month generosity calendar. Well, the
Okay.
reason you look at a 12-month generosity calendar is so that you have a plan, it's strategic, you know how you're moving people along, you know what you're going to do when, where, what. If you don't have a generosity calendar, then you tend to respond based out of fear. So something's not going right financially in April, and we're like, oh, we got to talk about giving for the next 2 months. Well, you don't respond in fear if you actually have a calendar. So what's the calendar include? When are you going to talk about giving throughout the year? Are you going to do a 90-day tithe challenge? If so, when are you going to do that? Are you going to follow up on first-time givers on a regular basis? Are you going to follow up on splash givers? Are you going to have stewardship things going on like Dave Ramsey course twice a year? Are you going to speak about it in your membership classes or your growth tracks or whatever you do? Are you going to break down the givers into 3 categories and have dessert nights with them at the end of the year, sort of a thank you at the end of the year, and here's what the new year looks like, which I always say break it down into different giving categories. Like, I just rattled off 6 or 7 things, like, man, that fits in a calendar. Like, here's when we know we're going to do this. All year we're going to do this, but here's when we know we're going to do this. Then we're going to do this 2 months later. Then we're going to do this. It's hitting it from different angles. You're attracting different audiences, but you're constantly maturing people in the subject of generosity.
Oh, that's good.
So there's a lot that goes into it. And I got to tell you, man, I was just on the phone 2 weeks ago with a church that we are executive coaching. So we do a lot of executive coaching where it's kind of high-level executive coaching. And I was on the phone with them, one of our executive coaches. We had a little powwow meeting with a couple of the staff members from there. They've been following the generosity calendar since January 1. They're giving... I think their giving is up around 24%. So where they normally average around $50,000 a month in income, they're now averaging 65, 68. They're seeing, so think about that. They're averaging 15, 18, 20,000 a month more. You times that out by a year. That's anywhere from $200,000 to $250,000 in a year. And it's ever increasing. And so it works. It works. But they're maturing people. More people are giving. The money's going up. It's all working for them.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it is an issue of discipleship. We usually tackle giving three times a year, and it's already spaced out as to when we're going to be talking about it. And then we also have a curriculum. We do that curriculum rooted. I think it came out of Mariners Church.
Yep,
and it has a tithing piece in there.
Yep.
Currently, we have 90 people doing the rooted curriculum.
I love it. That's great. That's perfect.
Yeah, we have about 260 people in family life groups, but 90 of those are specifically doing the rooted. So it's been really exciting. That piece there, it's our 3rd time doing it, so we've done it every year. Yeah. But I like what you're saying about the Dave Ramsey kind of piece. Yep. We haven't added that.
No, I think the rooted is amazing. I think all of it's good. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All of it. Just think about it, and whatever I can do to help you, let me know. And you can always check it out on ChurchBoom University as well. But cool. Anything else, man? We're kind of winding down our time here.
Yeah, I think those are huge. The for your preaching calendar, Chris, just what are some things what do you do in the summer? I'm walking through the book. In terms of the summer, when you got people going on vacation, coming back, things of that nature, it's kind of hard to do an extended series because they're they're missing out and they're doing other things. What are some ways you tackle the summer aspect of that?
Yeah, the thing that everybody's different. So we, as the founder of South Hills Church, we've always been very practical. Growing in your marriage, growing in your life, getting a handle on life, whatever, those kind of things, like dealing with trust issues, relationship issues, whatever, September through May. And then we usually take about mid-June till about the first week of August, because August is kind of a go back to school now these days.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We usually take that 6 weeks, honestly. And personally, we go a little bit deeper. We say, hey, we're going to study the book of Philippians, or we're going to look at the story of Ruth and talk about it for 6 weeks, or we're going to talk about whatever it is, but we're going to talk about something a little bit more deeper, if you will. I don't say deeper, but something more, book-oriented, chapter-oriented, study the life of oriented. That's all we do is we shift gears. One other thing I encourage pastors to do, again, this goes back to leadership pipelines. But if they're doing any sort of apprenticing, like a church we're working with right now that's seeing great growth, this is our third year coaching with them. And every summer they shift into another gear where they're apprenticing, not just 18-year-olds, 38-year-olds. And they grab like 18, 20 people in the church and they spend that 6 weeks with them every Tuesday. So what happens mentally in the staff is like, oh, so it's relaxed time. Well, no, it's not really relaxed time. It's shift into leadership mode time because we're all going to apprentice these people for the next 6 weeks. So we're going to go a little deeper on Sunday, but the staff is changing gears for 6 weeks to say, this next 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to apprentice. So that's a long, detailed explanation of things that we could talk about there. Okay. But I do think the summertime is an opportunity to not shut down, but shift lanes.
Okay. Shut down, but shift lanes. Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well,
awesome.
Man, thank you so much, Chris.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for being on. Thanks for checking it out. And man, if I can ever serve you, just let me know. We're always here to help. Yeah,
thank you so much, Chris. I actually think I am going to go to the ChurchBoom and pick up on some of those elements you mentioned.
Yeah, check it out, ChurchBoom University. It's on churchboom.org. You can go to ChurchBoom University. It's really, really good stuff. So you'll find so much stuff. So anyway, hey, good talking with you, man. Have an awesome day.
Appreciate it, Chris.
All right. Have a good day. Man, that was a great conversation with Tommy. Just love his heart, love his desire for ministry. And just want to remind you as well, before we close out, to check out churchboom.org. So much great things there. Check out ChurchBoom Network. That is an ongoing platform for pastors to work together, grow together, develop together. We shouldn't be doing ministry alone. So make sure you check that out, and we'll see you next time.